I know you grew up in Canada, but we'd like to go back and just talk about the inspiration of, who inspired you? What was the path to you wanting to do entertainment?
Well, I mean, I started entertaining in Ottawa, Canada, when I was a teenager. I started doing teachers, and I graduated early. And I was influenced a lot by George Kirby, who was an impersonator. And I used to go out to the clubs and see him perform when I was just a teenager. And he was, a black comedian, an impersonator. And he was terrific and helped me a lot. He really helped me a lot. You can't show anybody how to do impressions, but you can listen to them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can copy an impersonator doing an impression.
Sure.
You know?
It's kind of a shortcut.
Yeah, it is a shortcut, yeah. I used to do Will Jordan's Ed Sullivan. Do you remember Will Jordan?
Yeah.
He was the guy that looked like Ed Sullivan and sounded exactly like him. And I used to do Will Jordan's Ed Sullivan instead of doing Ed, because Ed didn't do himself too well. No, Ed was terrible.
Yeah. People did him much better than he did himself.
Well, Ed was a strange man and very powerful. Anybody under 40 have no idea who he is. Somebody the other day said to me, Ed Sullivan, was he a big name? And I said, yeah, he had a big TV show back in the 70s, 80s, maybe back as far as the 60s, I can't remember. And they said, well, he was a big star. And I said, yeah. And they said, what did he do? And I went, well, no. They said, did he tell jokes? No. Did he dance? No. Did he sing? No. What did he do? I had to think about it. You know what he did? He was a pointer.
He was the announcer.
He pointed to the acts, is what he did, and tried to read. And
tried to censor them. Told the Rolling Stones they couldn't say, let's spend the night together.
But everybody watched the Ed Sullivan Show. And if you appeared in the Ed Sullivan Show, and I was fortunate to do that early in my career, the next day almost everybody knew who you were. Because everybody watched Ed Sullivan.
There was maybe 3 channels at that point.
Yeah.
And it
was either Ed or
was Sunday Night Show, was it?
Sunday night, 8 o'clock, yeah.
I mean, introduced the world of the Beatles. It was
either Ed or a Test Pattern, one of the two.
There was no 423 channels at that point.
No. I think that's one of the reasons he was successful, was what else are you going to do,
Right. Yeah, it was that or watch the paint dry.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
But that
what was
show
the first break? What was
the Judy Garland show was
Judy Garland.
My first big break. 63. I was only 12, but Mel Torme, the singer, The Velvet Fog, chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Mel Torme got me on the Judy Garland show. He was musical director for Judy on her TV show, and we did a show together in Toronto. And we made a tape of all my impressions. He played it for Judy Garland, and she wasn't impressed. But when I did my impression of James Mason, that's when Judy came alive, because she worked with James Mason on A Star Is Born. She loved James Mason. So when I did James Mason, that got me on the Judy Garland show. And when I met James Mason later on, I said, thank you, Mr. Mason. You got my career started. He said, I don't know what you're talking about, and walked away.
Amazing. Now, so you studied basically creating impressions from other impressionists?
Well, yeah. I taped everything. Back in those days, you taped and you...
What was this, a reel-to-reel, or what kind of tape?
No, audio tape. You worked from the original, and then you'd copy a phrase or something they do, and... the easiest way to do an impression is to take a phrase that's, something like, go ahead, make my day. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger, hasta la vista, baby. Things like that are terrific,
Sure.
So you try and take a phrase like Ronald Reagan. All I did for a while was, well. I used to say to him, Mr. Reagan, President Reagan, how are you? Well, thank you. Well. He said, Rich, I think you've been to the well once too often. He was a wonderful man.
Sure.
I love Reagan.
Amazing.
Oh, he was great.
Right from this area right out here, and from acting the president.
I notice when you impersonate me, you say "well," and you always look down and then look up. And that was the way you did Reagan, was you looked down and then you looked up. And I said, why do you do that? And he said, well, Rich, you'd look down too if you owned a horse ranch. You know, he was quick. He was quick.
Amazing.
Wonderful sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I know back in the day you used to do albums too.
Yeah.
You had the opportunity and
yeah, I did a lot of albums.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and some of them they put holes in the middle of, which helped, you know.
Yeah.
I still have a lot of those. I still have a lot of those old albums. Young people today don't know what they are. They look like a black pizza, you know, with a hole in the middle, and they don't know what that is. They have no
vinyl's
idea.
coming back. You know,
it is.
Vinyl's. It's like the new thing.
Really?
Can you believe it? People going out and buying turntables on Black Friday here.
Really?
They are.
Wow.
It's an amazing thing.
Well, I've still got all my old records.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I know you did.
I must have done in my career about, I'd say about 8 or 9 albums. Yeah. Did a lot on the presidents, you know, the First Family, Rise Again, and
couple
Reagan,
on Nixon.
Johnson. I didn't do one on Nixon, but mostly Reagan.
Is that right?
Yeah, back in the 80s, I guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we're about to come to the close of another era of the Tonight Show, but to us, you know, Johnny was our evening entertainment.
Yeah.
I mean, what a legacy that he had.
And to think that people used to rush home when they went to dinner to watch The Tonight Show. It was a must. I got to get home in 8 minutes because Johnny's coming on. You imagine them doing that today?
No TiVo, no nothing.
No. Johnny was the best at what he did. He was a very complex man, though.
Yeah.
You never got to know Johnny Carson. He didn't really have any friends. You know, isn't that sad? He was a loner. He was a loner. He never. I talked to him during the commercials, but that was about it. Little wave when he left, and that was it. Nobody ever knew Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
Most popular man in America, and didn't know anybody, and was kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like he lasted that much longer after he stopped the show. It seemed like that's what he lived for.
No, I thought he would go on and do specials and produce, and you know, actually at the end of his life, he did nothing. Johnny Carson did nothing, and it's difficult to not do anything because you never know when you're through.
Sit at the beach and watch the waves.
That's right. Sit on the beach and wait for his new wife.
Amazing stuff. Do you remember the first time that you did Johnny on a show? Or
oh yeah.
What was that first appearance?
Well, I wouldn't do the Tonight Show until I had Johnny's voice down. So I passed on it for a number of years, and then I was out in San Diego one weekend, and I was looking at a bunch of ostriches. This is a true story. I was standing in front of a cage looking at ostriches, and that's how I got to do Johnny Carson. Because if you think about it, Johnny was an ostrich. You know, always looking around, and that's the way I did Johnny Carson. I thought of an ostrich. And the first time I did him, I laid an egg. No, I'm not kidding.
I remember you telling the story on the actual Dean Martin roast with Johnny sitting next to you.
Yeah.
You told that story.
Well, I did, I think, on the Dean Martin roast, the one to Johnny, I did his tics.
Yeah.
His mannerisms.
Well, you had the whole
I think
list.
there were 21 different mannerisms.
Yeah, you had the list.
Yeah.
You read them off.
That's right.
And while you're reading them, he's fidgeting.
He's doing what I'm doing.
And then he's noticing that you're making fun of what he's about to do.
He used to say to me when I did them, I don't do that. And then he said, I'll be damned, I do. It was amazing because I don't think he knew some of his mannerisms. He had 21 of them. 21 different tics. Hands in the pockets, hands behind him, scratching the hands, scratching the head. Oh yeah, he had many mannerisms. Great subject.
So you would tape the shows, watch them back, study the moves.
Yeah.
Would you rehearse this in front of a mirror, or you rehearse this on tape?
No, not really. I would try it out on my family. They were my toughest audience because, you know, the family knew me pretty well and knew how corny I could be. And if I got a laugh from the family, then I knew I had a pretty good impression going for me, you know. Because my mother was so critical. Richard, I saw you on the Sullivan Show last Sunday. This is my mother. Yes, Mother, what did you think? I didn't like your tie. Well, what about the performance? I didn't notice. I hated the tie and the suit.
Couldn't see past
That was
it.
my mother.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, Johnny was a huge hit for you. Nixon. What were some of the other characters that you just really got noticed and recognized for and really enjoyed doing?
Well, probably Nixon. You know, did a lot of Nixon in the early days when he was in so much trouble. There was so much material. And then I took a lot of the Nixon material and used it for Bill Clinton because they in some ways they were kind of similar. Although Nixon wasn't sexual, but you know, the truth thing, you know, was pretty similar because they both lied. Let's face it. But then what president doesn't?
It's a tough gig.
Huh?
It's a tough gig.
Oh, listen, a president can't win. It doesn't matter who's president, you cannot make it in that job.
You go in the winner and you always go out the loser.
You owe too many favors, is the problem. You
Yeah.
know? So I don't do Barack Obama, but he's having trouble doing himself right now. So.
Now, how about Jay Leno?
Jay Leno, you know, not a great voice to do, but you know, got a great show tonight. You know, the chin that walks, right? I wonder what he will do now. Wonder if he will be like Johnny and just kind of disappear, or whether we'll still see him.
Go look at all his cars, I guess. He's got a hangar full of cars in Burbank.
No, he doesn't need money, and he certainly has recognition, but let's hope we still see him, you know. I'd hate to think of somebody like him fading away, you know.
Yeah, they're kind of pushing him out early. He's number one. Why make the change?
You know, everything is youth today, you know. They keep thinking, we gotta have somebody younger to grab the young audience. But when you think about it, not a lot of young people watch TV, you know.
Too many
Certainly
choices.
not a lot of young people go to nightclubs or go to Vegas in the shows, you know. They want you to appeal to the young people, but I looked at, I don't see any young people, you know. They don't have much money. They're spending it on records and phones and beer.
Well, let's talk about the heyday when you first came to Hollywood. Talk about your greatest impressions of just the entertainment capital of all the live performances and shows. And
I came down to do the Judy Garland show. I'd never been to LA before. You know, I was starstruck. I'd run into celebrities from time to time, and the Garland show did a lot for my career because a lot of people watched it. Sullivan Show was even more helpful. The Tonight Show, Hollywood Squares, the Dean Martin roasts, which are now out on DVD.
Amazing stuff.
And there are like 40-some Dean Martin roasts. I didn't realize there were so many. I was on about 24 of them, which is hard to believe. I would have said, if somebody asked me, how many Dean Martin shows do you do, Rich? I would have said maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12. You know? I didn't know I did so many, so...
They've documented them all, and it's an amazing show. Where did they film that in town?
Most of it was done at the MGM Grand in Vegas. Some were done in Hollywood. Most of them were done at the MGM. Dean would fly up there. He'd come down before the roast. We'd walk to the dais, and Dean sometimes would say to me, "Who are we honoring tonight, Rich?" I'd say, "What? Who is the guest of honor?" I said, "Dean, you don't know?" "No, I didn't bother asking." "No, Michael Landon we're doing." "Oh, that's a good choice, Michael Landon. We're going to have fun." In other words, Dean didn't know.
He was another pointer, huh?
Well, he just sailed through life and nothing was important to Dean. He just read the cue cards and smiled a lot and drank a bit and went home. You know, he was like Johnny. He wasn't too sociable. Yeah, but a nice man. Very nice man. Yeah.
I mean, the Rat Pack. I mean,
oh yeah,
what a legend.
People say, does Dean drink that much? I said, no, he spilled most of it. But I think Sammy and Frank drank much more than Dean.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an act, really.
Sure.
I never saw Dean drunk. Oh, yes, I did see Dean drunk. Correction, I saw him at the first Reagan inauguration. Really wiped out. Frank canceled him from the show.
Did they really?
Yep. I remember I was standing backstage and Frank said, "You're not going on, Dean, because you're going to embarrass yourself." That's the only time I ever saw Dean, you know, a little bit pie-eyed. Yeah.
A total act. I guess they said Foster Brooks didn't even drink.
Foster Brooks, I don't think he did at all. But you know, it's interesting how popular Foster was. I don't know whether that kind of humor would work today, because drunks aren't particularly funny, are they? Yeah, too many problems with drinkers. And, but back then, drunks were very popular, and Foster was huge success. Mostly on the Dean Martin roast, though. I don't remember him in much else.
Right.
You know?
Now, what were some of the other highlights of the roast? Who else do you remember roasting?
Oh, well, Ruth Buzzy. She was always hitting people with her purse. And if you watch any of the roasts, you'll always see Ruth Buzzy hitting Frank and Dean with her purse. And all they're worried about is their hair. If you watch, they're trying to protect their hair.
Right.
Otherwise, she was clobbering people. I remember Peter Falk being tremendous on the Sinatra roast. Wonderful routine. Oh my God. I remember, as I said, the one on Johnny was great. The one on Jimmy Stewart was a great roast. That was fabulous. You know, there were some roasts that were more interesting than others. It depends on who they were roasting, you know.
Yeah. It was great stuff. Now, did any of these stars ever take offense to any impressions?
I don't think so. No, not really. You know, Paul Lynde used to, when I'd do him on Hollywood Squares, he'd always go, "Who's he doing? Who's that? Is that supposed to be me? Get a day job. You're disgusting." You know. But I think he just put that on. But he always pretended like he didn't know I was doing him. You know.
Now, I know you did. You appeared as Johnny, played Johnny in The Night Shift.
Yeah.
You ever get any feedback from him or anything?
I heard he was pleased with it. You know. Apparently the story is true. It was a pretty good show. Yeah, I was thrilled to do that. Yeah. That was great fun. The Late Shift.
Yeah. Now, talk about, you know, some of the things you're doing now, because you're living in Vegas. Everybody, you know, comes to Vegas for all the conventions. It's becoming the big, you know, hit again.
Well, I've been doing a tribute to Jimmy Stewart, a one-man play on his life. I've been doing it for 5 years. I did it at the Las Vegas Hilton for a year, and we're getting ready to take it to Broadway. So it may happen. We're working on it, and I think it's a good show. It's got 24 impressions in the show. And it's a salute, a tribute to Jimmy Stewart, who was one of my idols. And I think it's a good show. I think people will enjoy it, and it's fun to do.
Yeah.
And I was just up at the Jimmy Stewart Museum in Indiana last weekend, and raising money for the museum. And Jimmy's daughter was there, and she said, "I love being with you, Rich. It's like being with my father." I said, "I know. I keep forgetting my glasses, and I can't find my wallet, and I don't know what happened to my cell phone. It was here a few minutes ago." And Judy would say, "That's my dad. That's him." Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, you know, this businesses and the society, all the technology, everything's moving so fast now with the internet and the cell phone and everything. It's great to be able to Google and watch your old, you know, performances. But what do you miss the most about the classic days, the heyday of Hollywood? What are we, the generation today, missing the most?
I miss the entertainers that we had back in the 70s. I mean, if you look at those roasts, you'll see the best of the best. best comics and best movie stars of all time, and they were all funny. And if you look at roasts today, they're pretty blue and not too interesting. But to stand up there as a young 20-year-old, 23, 24-year-old, and work with Jack Benny and George Burns and John Wayne and Lucille Ball and Orson Welles, one of the great thrills of my life. Really was. It was a wonderful time. And then, you know, you went over to the lounges in Vegas and saw Don Rickles and Keely Smith and Louis Prima and you know, I mean, so many great performers. I mean, that was a great time.
This is Johnny Carson, Ed, Doc, and the whole crew are here wishing you a great time here on the only station that matters, Indie Power.